Mr. Willis. How you doing? I'm sitting here at school in the middle of the night teaching you stuff about biology. Isn't that incredible? This is what I do. You're at home playing video games and I'm here working. That's the reason why I'm so great. That's one of the reasons why I'm so great. Anyway, I'm going to give you a quick overview of Chapter 31. And it won't take too long, but feel free to peruse the chapter after I'm done talking. Let me just make sure this thing's aimed right. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And let's see. Ooh, that kind of makes it spooky. But you can see it really well. And I'll kind of give it an up-close view. So, there we go. It's a guy in a spacesuit. What do you think about that? Okay, so what this chapter is about all the different types of tissues that are in organisms. And they're going to use humans as an example in these next few chapters. But as you can see, what a tissue is, it's a layer of cells. A layer of cells that works together with other cells in that layer to get a job done. And so right here you see a layer of cells. We call this simple squamous epithelium. It's a layer of cells that basically forms kind of a barrier inside the lungs. In your lungs you have little air sacs which require a thin layer. When the air comes in, the air goes into, forms kind of like a balloon. This layer of cells forms a spherical balloon, basically, that keeps holds the oxygen. The oxygen will diffuse through the cracks between these cells and get into your blood. So that's what this tissue layer does. We say that these types of tissues are called epithelium. Epithelium are protective layers of cells. Simple squamous epithelium is about the thinnest layer of cells you can get in your lungs or anywhere in the body. And then you see the kidneys have a layer of cells called simple cuboidal epithelium. Simple means a single layer, and cuboidal means cube-shaped cells. So simple cuboidal epithelium. You find that lining the little tubules inside your lungs. These cells right here are called simple columnar epithelium, and you find those in your digestive system, making up the walls of your intestines. And they're thicker cells because the intestines require more protection. Because stuff that you eat, think about the stuff that you eat. It could be anything. You guys are pretty nasty. You just pick some up off the ground and eat it. It might have some poisons or something, and you need a kind of a thicker layer of protection that makes it more difficult for bad things to get through. So you have your simple columnar epithelium, a single layer of column-like cells. Lining your airways are pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. That's a lot of words there, but basically cells that have cilia on them. And these cilia will grab particles that are coming into your lungs because, you guys are out smoking, I guess, or doing whatever y'all do at parties. And all the bad stuff from the cigarette smoke and everything will get caught by these little hairs, and these little hairs will push the bad stuff back out, and then you cough it up, That's why you're always clearing your throat, you smokers out there. I know you girls, y'all are also, back when I was a kid, it was the guys that smoked, now it's the girls. Anyway, of course I never smoked. My body is a temple. The Temple of Doom. Okay, anyway, look at this. This is the lining of your mouth, and your skin looks like this over here. It's called stratified squamous epithelium. And by the way, you should be looking at this in your book while we're going. Let me see what page it is. Page 588. Yeah. Where all this is. So, anyway, we got layers, many layers. Stratified means many layers. Squamous means flat cells. So many layers of flat cells. That gives you a good barrier of protection for the inside of your mouth, and the surface of your skin looks like this. And on the surface of your skin, the upper layers are dead cells. So all these epithelial layers I've just described, they're for protecting surfaces in your body. And it's a type of tissue. A tissue, it's a bunch of cells working together to protect surfaces in your body. This picture is showing you what humans, one thing that people have are glands that secrete substances. And this is what they look like. Here's a sweat gland in the skin. You have cells here that squirt out water and salts and things that will go through a duct and empty out onto the surface of your skin. The water will then evaporate and take heat away with it. And that's a way that your body has of cooling itself. Here's a gland, what a gland in your pancreas might look like, that squirts out hormones or that squirts out digestive juices, has these lobes to it and cells that secrete a substance and squirt it out. That's another thing that you'll find lining the surfaces of organs in various locations. These things, they're called glands. And glands are basically something that evolved in the mammals, use them more than anything else. Now the next type of tissue that we come into is called connective tissue. Connective tissue connects things in the body. And if you're wondering what it looks like if you peel away your skin and look at the stuff that's between your skin and your muscles, it's this stuff. It looks like this. It's called loose connective tissue. It's got a bunch of cells in it, and there's a white blood cell that eats pathogens, bad things that are floating around there. And it's got fibers in it that keep your the underlying layers of the skin, stretchy. If you pull on your skin, it'll bounce back. There's all kinds of fibers in here, like elastic fibers and collagen fibers and stretchy fibers that kind of hold your skin in place. Here's a stem cell. That's a cell that can become any type of cell. It can become a wide variety of things. So it is yet to differentiate. That's the word we use there. And there's some fat cells. So we call all this tissue kind of underneath the skin connective tissue. This particular type is called loose connective tissue. And it shows it on page 590. And then we have adipose tissue. That's fat. That's just straight fat. That's what your fat looks like under a microscope. And if you're interested in looking at this stuff, we spend a week on it in anatomy, looking at all these slides. Here's what a type of connective tissue called dense fibrous connective tissue. If you've ever torn a ligament, or if you take a tendon, a ligament is a connection between two bones, and a tendon is connection between muscles and bones. This is what they look like under the microscope. Tightly bound together collagen fibers. Collagen fibers are real tough. You may have heard of collagen beneath the skin. And this is what cartilage looks like under the microscope. It's a connective tissue too. Special cells called chondrocytes sit inside your cartilage and squirt out nutrients to the surrounding matrix that's around the cells and builds up this tough tissue that we call cartilage. And cartilage sits at the end of all your bones. And there's cartilage too lying outside your ribs next to your sternum. You got cartilage in a lot of places. Your nose is made of cartilage. Your ears are made of cartilage. So that's cartilage. And this is what bone looks like under a microscope. Bone is also considered a connective tissue because the bones connect things together. And you have cells kind of in a circular arrangement around a central canal. There's a central canal that carries blood vessels and nerves. This is what your bone looks like microscopically. And your bone is a living tissue. It's made of living cells which lie in each of these dark areas here. And the cells live, and there are blood vessels running through the bone too. So if you break a bone, it's going to bleed like crazy. So bones and cartilage and fat and dense connective tissues like ligaments and tendons, they are all considered connective tissues that connect things together in the body. And that's your second type of tissue. The first type of tissue is epithelial tissue, and the second type of tissue is connective tissue. Blood is also considered a connective tissue. And there's lots of types of blood cells. There's red blood cells. Those carry oxygen and carbon dioxide. There's white blood cells that fight disease. Look at those guys there. There's platelets that help blood clot. And that's what blood would look like if you put it in a test tube and let it sit for a while. The red blood cells would go to the bottom, and the white blood cells are a little less dense. They'd sit there. And then the liquidy yellow plasma would sit on top. Ooh, it's kind of gross. But the blood connects things in the body too. So blood is considered a connective tissue. And then the third type of tissue in the body is called muscle tissue. And there's three types of muscle tissue. There's skeletal muscle, which they show on the left. That's muscles that you can control. You know, if you say, look, Mr. Willis has huge muscles, you're talking about my skeletal muscles. That's the muscles that you can see in your body. And you can control those voluntarily. They're under voluntary control. But then there's also the smooth muscle, which looks like this under the microscope. And you can't control voluntarily. It surrounds your digestive system and squeezes your food through your digestive system. You can't voluntarily control that. You can't just think about, I'm going to digest faster. It does it on its own. And there's a visible difference between the smooth muscle and the skeletal muscle. The skeletal muscle has stripes on it. They're called striations. And I'll explain what those do when we talk about how muscles work in a coming later chapter. And the smooth muscle doesn't have those striations. The skeletal muscle can move quickly and very strongly, and the smooth muscle moves slowly with wave-like contractions that squeeze the food along. There's smooth muscle surrounding your blood vessels, so your blood vessels can be squeezed off, so they're not transporting blood anywhere. And then the heart has what's called cardiac muscle, which is a little bit different, and it's also not under conscious control. So those are the three types of muscle: skeletal, smooth, cardiac. And muscle is the third type of tissue. So you have epithelial tissue, connective tissue, and muscle tissue. And finally you have nervous tissue. That's the fourth type. Nerve tissue is tissue that can send an electrical impulse very quickly from one place in the body to another. Often it can travel at speeds up to 200-300 miles per hour. If somebody touches your toe, your brain gets that signal very quickly, and it just takes a second for you to realize somebody's touched your toe. It's not instantaneous, it takes a second. And a nerve cell has a special look to it. It looks like this. It's got a cell body and these little extensions called dendrites, and then a long extension called an axon that sends the signal. Now, this axon can be really long. It can go all the way, say, from your toe to your spinal cord, or from your spinal cord to the end of your finger. So, I mean, these can be long. In a giraffe, you can have axons that are like 9 or 10 feet long. That's a long axon. Hey, there's a cool looking newt. I don't know why he's in there. I think there's a special reading section about how those things can regenerate their lost body parts and such. Read about that. That's on page 594. I haven't read that yet. I need to read it. Look, you amputate it, it grows on back in these guys. Why can't it do that in us? Maybe if we figure out how it works in them, we can figure out how to do it in us. Then you can cut off your arm and it'll grow back. That'd be a good trick, wouldn't it? The book talks about all the different systems. Here's a table on page 596, all the different body systems. Nervous, endocrine, skeletal, muscle, digestive. And we're going to go through these in the next 8 chapters or so. We're going to go through each one. In the AP Biology class, they want you to know the most about the nervous system, the endocrine system, and the lymphatic system. Those are the 3 chapters we're really going to study. We're going to do that, the entire chapter there. You're going to read the whole chapters there. And we're going to kind of skim over the other ones like I'm doing this chapter. We're not going to spend too much time on the other ones. Here are some cavities and such inside the body, some open areas inside the body. We learned the names of all these cavities in my anatomy class. Cranial cavities where the brain sits. The thoracic cavity is where the heart and lungs sits. The abdominal cavity is where the stomach and intestines and liver are. The pelvic cavity is where your reproductive organs sit. Well, actually, they're in females, but not in males. But anyway, there's also intestine there, and here's a look at it from straight on. Cavities are open areas in the body. The next section, 31.3, goes into the skin. It shows how the skin is arranged. The skin is just a very dynamic organ. It's got a layer of fat underneath. It's called the subcutaneous layer. And up top is stratified squamous epithelium. Cells are multiplying from here, and by the time the cells get up here, they're dead. And they're filled with a waterproof protein called keratin that keeps water from leaking out of your body. If it wasn't for your epidermis, you'd constantly be losing water to the atmosphere and you'd dry up and die. But your epidermis is a waterproof barrier of dead cells at the top that won't let water out. And that's good for us. We don't have to drink nearly as much because of that. The epidermis also has cells in it called melanocytes that will color the skin. So people who are real dark skinned have active melanocytes. And people who are light skinned have inactive melanocytes. Sometimes the melanocytes can become cancerous. And that's a type of cancer called a melanoma. You ever heard of that? You don't want that because that can spread pretty quickly and get into these blood vessels and spread to the rest of the body. We don't want that. And you have cancer growing everywhere in your body, and it's hard to survive that sort of thing. In the dermis here, you got all sorts of things. You got hair follicles, growing hairs that can keep you warm. Humans have lost most of their hair, but animals really need that hair to keep them warm. Humans can just put on clothes. We're smart. I'm very smart. You guys are working on it. This is an oil gland here, sebaceous gland. It squirts oil onto the hair to keep it from fraying and coming apart. You girls probably know about split ends where your hair comes apart if it loses the oil. Shampoos and such that we use have oil in them to help that process. This is a muscle called the erector pili muscle that can pull on the hair and let it stand straight up, so that that'll make, for an animal, that'll make it have a thicker fur coat, and that'll keep it warmer. You can still see that happening when you're cold. You get goosebumps. That's from these muscles pulling. And then there's your sweat glands that I talked about before. There's one of them there coiled up that squirts out sweat to cool you. And there's a bunch of blood vessels you see running through here. And there's a bunch of nerves. The yellow thing are nerves that can sense. Your skin can sense 4 things: touch, pain, hot, and cold. It has 4 separate sensors for those 4 things. It actually has 2 different touch sensors: deep touch and light touch. Deep pressure and light pressure. And so we got the epidermis, the dermis, and the subcutaneous layer. That's about it for the skin that covers your body and tries to maintain homeostasis. Now, homeostasis, there's a cancer, there's a melanoma, I told you about that. There's a carcinoma, it's another type of skin cancer. If you ever get something that looks like that on your skin, go to the doctor quickly. Anyway, the last section talks about homeostasis, which is a word meaning keeping the body steady. And your skin helps you do this. Now, in this example that they show here, it shows how a thermostat helps control temperature. If the temperature in the room gets too hot, then there's a sensor on the thermostat that's on the wall that will turn on the air conditioner to make it cooler again. And it balances the temperature out. If the temperature gets too cold, the sensor turns on the heater and warms it up, and rebalancing the system. So your body has a thermostat too. It's in your brain. And your body's thermostat, if it gets too cold, then signals will be sent to your, I guess up here at the top is if it gets too warm. If it gets too warm, the hypothalamus, which is a part of the brain, can sense it, and it'll send nerve signals to your skin and tell the blood vessels in your skin to dilate. That means to get wider. And more blood will rush to your skin, and your skin will turn kind of red. You ever notice that when you're hot, your skin turns red? And the hot blood is near the surface, and the heat can be lost to the cooler air. And also you'll start sweating. Signals will be sent to the sweat glands to start sweating, and that'll rebalance the system. If your body gets too cold, the brain figures that out and sends messages to those muscles in your skin to pull the hairs up, and that'll make you warmer. And it'll even send messages to your muscles and tell you to shiver, and that'll make you warmer. And it'll send messages to your brain to tell you to put some clothes on or put a blanket on or something, and that'll make you warmer. And so all of that will rebalance the system. So we call this keeping your system balanced. We call it homeostasis. So that's what the final section talks about, and homeostasis is very important. It's not just important in the body to keep constant body temperature, but you want to keep your blood pressure constant, you got to keep your water levels constant, your sugar levels, your salt levels. The level of every single thing you read on the side of a cereal box has to be kept constant in your body. Calcium, iron, everything. So your body has ways of balancing every little thing. If the calcium in your body gets too low, it's sucked from your bones into the blood. And if your calcium gets too high, it's stored away in the bones. So all of that is a ways to keep homeostasis. So that was just a lightning fast review of what chapter 31 is about, and it's kind of the opening chapter that's kind of leads you into all the different body systems, which is what we're going to be studying for about the next month or so in this class. So I hope you watch this, and I get a message to how many views this video gets, so I'm going to know if I ask who watched it and you all raise your hands and it's got 7 views, then I know that half of y'all are lying. Okay, Mr. Willis is out.